She was sleeping in row 10, head against the window, earbuds in, trying to block out the world. The flight from Denver to Dallas was half empty. One of those quiet Tuesday afternoon flights where most passengers were business travelers or retirees. Nobody paid attention to the woman in the faded hoodie and jeans. She looked tired, older than she probably was. Her face was lined with something that wasn't quite age. It was something else, something deeper. Then the intercom crackled. The captain's voice came through, steady but tight. "Folks, this is Captain Reynolds. We have a situation. Both of our pilots are experiencing severe medical distress. I need to know if there are any licensed pilots on this aircraft, military or commercial. If you have flight experience, please press your call button immediately." The cabin went silent. That heavy, suffocating kind of silence where everyone stops breathing at once. People looked around, waiting for someone to stand, waiting for a hero to appear, but no one moved. Seconds stretched into eternity. The plane was on autopilot, but storms were ahead. They needed human hands. They needed someone who knew what to do when everything went wrong. In row 10, the woman opened her eyes. She didn't move at first, just stared at the seat in front of her. Her jaw tightened. Her hand went to her wrist, where a faded military tattoo disappeared under her sleeve. She took a breath, then another, and then, slowly, she reached up and pressed the call button. A flight attendant rushed over, eyes wide with hope and fear. "Yes, ma'am, do you have flight experience?" The woman pulled out her earbuds, kept her voice low. "Yeah, I do." The attendant's face lit up. She grabbed the woman's arm. "Come with me, now." As they walked toward the cockpit, people stared. Whispers followed. "Who is she? Is she a pilot? She doesn't look like one." The woman ignored them. She'd been invisible for years. Preferred it that way. But right now, 127 people needed her to be visible. Needed her to be what she used to be. The cockpit door opened. Inside, the co-pilot was slumped in his seat, unconscious. The captain, a man in his 50s, with sweat pouring down his face, was clutching his chest, trying to stay conscious. He looked at her with desperate eyes. "Can you fly?" She stepped inside. Sat down in the co-pilot seat, strapped in. Her hands moved to the controls like muscle memory, like coming home. "Yeah, I can fly." Her name was Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Vance, retired, 52 years old, 28 years of service. She'd flown A-10 Warthogs in Iraq and Afghanistan, close air support. The kind of flying where you come in low, take fire, and still have to put ordnance exactly where it needs to be. She logged over 3,000 flight hours in combat zones, been shot at more times than she could count, crash landed twice, saved more lives than she ever talked about. But that was a lifetime ago. She'd retired 3 years earlier. Medical discharge, PTSD, the kind that makes you wake up screaming, the kind that makes you avoid crowds, the kind that makes you feel like a ghost in your own life. She didn't talk about her service, didn't wear the uniform anymore, didn't go to reunions. She just tried to disappear, tried to be normal, tried to forget. But you don't forget how to fly. Captain Reynolds looked at her, barely conscious. His voice was weak. "We're at 35,000 feet. Autopilot is on. But there's a storm system ahead. We need to navigate around it, and we need to land. Can you do that?" Sarah's hands were already moving, checking instruments, reading altitudes, scanning weather radar. She didn't answer him with words. She answered with action. "Captain, I've got the controls. You focus on staying conscious. We're going to be fine." Her voice was calm, steady, the kind of voice that doesn't waver when everything is falling apart. Reynolds nodded weakly, then passed out. Sarah was alone now, just her and the machine, and 127 souls depending on her. She switched off the autopilot, took manual control. The yoke felt familiar in her hands, solid, real. For the first time in 3 years, the noise in her head went quiet. The flashbacks stopped. The fear stopped. There was only the flight, only the mission. The storm was ahead. Dark clouds, turbulence. She banked left, adjusting altitude, 找到一条清晰的路径. The plane shuddered as it hit rough air, but her hands were steady. She'd flown through worse, much worse. In the cabin, people were starting to realize something was happening. The plane was turning, dipping, rising. Someone who knew what they were doing was flying. A man in row 15, a retired Air Force mechanic, recognized the maneuvers. He stood up, looked toward the cockpit, and whispered to himself, "Whoever that is, they know what they're doing." Sarah's eyes were locked on the instruments. Airspeed, altitude, heading, fuel. Everything was marginal, but manageable. She contacted air traffic control. "Dallas approach. This is United 2247. We have a dual pilot incapacitation. I'm a military trained pilot, currently at the controls, requesting priority landing and medical on standby." The controller's voice came back, professional but urgent. "United 2247, roger that. You are clear direct to Dallas Fort Worth, runway 18R. Emergency crews are standing by. State your flight experience. A-10 combat pilot, 3,000 hours, 28 years military service." There was a pause. Then the controller's voice came back, quieter, almost reverent. "Copy that, ma'am. You've got this. Bring them home." The approach was rough. Crosswinds, low visibility. But Sarah had landed in worse conditions, in sandstorms, under fire, with half her instruments shot out. This was a commercial jet, not a Warthog. But the principles were the same. Speed, angle, timing, trust your training, trust yourself. She lined up the runway, adjusted flaps, reduced throttle. The plane descended smoothly. 1,000 feet, 500 feet. The runway lights appeared through the rain. She flared just before touchdown. The wheels kissed the asphalt with barely a bump. She reversed thrust, applied brakes. The plane rolled to a stop. The cabin erupted in applause. People were crying, hugging, thanking God. Sarah just sat there, hands still on the controls, breathing. The flight attendant opened the cockpit door. "Ma'am, you just saved everyone on this plane." Sarah didn't respond. She was staring at her hands. They weren't shaking. For the first time in years, they weren't shaking. Emergency crews swarmed the plane. Paramedics rushed Captain Reynolds and the co-pilot to the hospital. Both would survive. Sarah stayed in the cockpit until everyone had deplaned. Then she quietly stood, grabbed her bag, and tried to slip away. But the passengers were waiting. They found out who she was. One of the flight attendants had told them. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Vance, retired, combat pilot, hero. They lined the jetway, applauding, some saluting, some just crying and saying thank you. Sarah kept her head down, tried to walk past. But an older man, a veteran himself, stepped in front of her. He was wearing a Vietnam veteran cap. He looked her in the eyes. "Welcome home, Colonel." She stopped. Those two words hit her harder than any landing ever had. She nodded. Couldn't speak. Just nodded. Outside the terminal, news crews were waiting. Someone had already leaked the story. Retired combat pilot saves 127 lives after both pilots collapse. But Sarah didn't stop for interviews. Didn't want the attention. She just wanted to go home. She got in the cab and disappeared into the night. But the story didn't disappear. It went viral. Within 24 hours, it was on every news station. Social media exploded. People wanted to know who she was, why she retired, what she done in the war. The Air Force released a statement. Lieutenant Colonel Vance is a decorated combat veteran with a distinguished record of service. We are proud of her actions and grateful for her continued commitment to protecting lives. 3 days later, Sarah received a call. It was from the Pentagon. A voice she didn't recognize. "Miss Vance, this is General Catherine Marks. I'm calling to personally thank you and to ask if you'd consider coming back. We need pilots like you, instructors, leaders, people who don't freeze when everything goes wrong." Sarah sat in her small apartment, phone in hand, staring at the wall. She thought about the cockpit, about how quiet her mind had been, about how, for the first time in years, she'd felt like herself. "I'll think about it," she said. "That's all I'm asking," the general replied. 6 months later, Sarah Vance was back in uniform, not as a combat pilot, as an instructor at the Air Force Academy, teaching the next generation. showing them that flying isn't just about the machine. It's about the mind, the heart, the ability to stay calm when the world is falling apart. Her students didn't know her story at first. She didn't advertise it. But word got around, and when they found out who she was, they listened, really listened. One day, a young cadet asked her, "Colonel, were you scared when you took the controls on that plane?" Sarah thought for a moment. Then she smiled, terrified. But fear doesn't disqualify you. It just means you're human. What matters is what you do with it. The cadet nodded, scribbled notes. And as class ended, Sarah looked out at the rows of young faces. Future pilots, future leaders, future heroes. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Because some people are born to fly, and some people are born to save lives. And sometimes, when everything goes wrong at 35,000 feet, those two things are exactly the same person, sleeping in row 10, waiting for the moment when the world needs them again. The story of Flight 2247 didn't fade the way Sarah hoped it would. 2 weeks after the landing, she received a package at her apartment, no return address. Inside was a handwritten letter and a photograph. The photo showed a young girl, maybe 7 years old, smiling at the camera. She was holding a toy airplane. The letter was from her mother. "Dear Colonel Vance, my name is Rebecca Chen. I was in seat 14C on Flight 2247 with my daughter Emma. We were flying home from visiting her grandfather, who's in hospice. She just gotten to say goodbye to him. I don't know if you remember us, but Emma remembers you. When we landed and everyone was clapping, she asked me who the pilot was. I told her it was a woman, a soldier, a hero. Emma has been drawing pictures of you ever since. She wants to be a pilot now. She wants to be brave like you. I just wanted you to know that you didn't just save our lives that day. You gave my daughter a dream. Thank you. With deepest gratitude, Rebecca Chen." Sarah sat at her kitchen table, holding the letter, staring at the photo of the little girl. She spent 3 years trying to disappear, trying to become no one. But this little girl saw her, saw something worth becoming. Sarah folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. She didn't cry. She'd forgotten how. But something inside her shifted. A small crack in the armor she'd built around herself. At the Air Force Academy, her first day as an instructor was intimidating in ways combat never had been. Standing in front of a classroom of 22 cadets, all of them younger than her service record, she felt exposed, vulnerable. She wore her uniform, but it felt strange, like wearing someone else's clothes. The cadets stared at her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. She was older, female, quiet, not the loud, commanding presence they expected from a combat veteran. She introduced herself simply. "I'm Colonel Vance. I flew A-10 seconds for 23 years. I'm here to teach you how not to die." The room was silent. One cadet in the back, a cocky kid named Dawson, smirked. "With all due respect, ma'am, isn't the A-10 kind of outdated?" Sarah looked at him, didn't blink. "The A-10 is slow, ugly, and according to the Pentagon, obsolete. But when you're pinned down, out of ammo, and the enemy is closing in, it's the most beautiful thing you'll ever see." Dawson stopped smirking. She spent the first week teaching them the basics, not how to fly. They already knew that. She taught them how to think, how to make decisions when every option is bad, how to stay calm when the radios are screaming and the ground is on fire. She used real scenarios, missions she'd flown, situations she'd survived. The cadets listened, but she could tell some of them didn't believe her. They thought she was exaggerating, embellishing, making herself sound tougher than she was. Then one day, a cadet named Lieutenant Harris brought in a tablet. "Ma'am, I found something online. Is this you?" He turned the screen toward her. It was a declassified combat footage video from 2009, helmet cam from a ground unit in Afghanistan. They were under heavy fire, surrounded, calling for air support. The voice on the radio was calm, almost bored. "Raptor 2, this is Hog 1. I've got eyes on your position. Sit tight, I'm coming in hot." The video showed an A-10 screaming in low, cannon roaring, tearing through enemy positions with surgical precision. Then it banked hard, took ground fire, smoke trailing from the wing, but kept circling, kept firing, kept protecting the guys on the ground. The soldier holding the camera was crying, yelling "thank you" over and over. The voice on the radio responded, "Just doing my job, Raptor. Stay safe." The call sign at the bottom of the screen read, Hawk 1, Lieutenant Colonel S. Vance. The classroom was dead silent. Harris looked at her. "That's you." Sarah didn't confirm or deny. She just said, "That was a long time ago." But from that moment on, the cadets stopped questioning her. They started asking real questions. What do you do when your wingman goes down? How do you choose between two bad options? What does it feel like to kill someone? She answered honestly. You don't think about it in the moment. You think about the guys on the ground, the pilots beside you, the mission. The killing part comes later, in the quiet, in the dark, when you can't sleep. She paused. That's the part they don't train you for. 3 months into her teaching assignment, she got a call from General Marks again. "Colonel, I need you to do something for me. There's a pilot, Captain Derek Hollis. He's one of our best, but he's been grounded. Psych eval, PTSD. He won't talk to the counselors, won't talk to anyone, but he knows who you are. He asked for you." Sarah's stomach tightened. She didn't do therapy, didn't do feelings, but she agreed. Captain Hollis was sitting in a gray VA office when she arrived. He was young, maybe 30, with dark circles under his eyes and hands that wouldn't stop moving. He looked up when she walked in. "You're really her, the one from the plane." Sarah sat down across from him. "Yeah, that's me." He laughed bitterly. "They sent you to fix me." She shook her head. "Nobody sent me to fix you. I'm here because you asked, and because I know what it's like." He stared at her. "Do you? Do you really?" Sarah leaned forward. "I know what it's like to see your wingman go down and not be able to do anything about it. I know what it's like to drop ordnance on building and wonder if there were kids inside. I know what it's like to come home and feel like a stranger in your own skin." She paused. "So, yeah, I know." Hollis's hands stopped moving. His voice broke. "I killed civilians. I didn't mean to. The intel was wrong. But I'm the one who pulled the trigger." Sarah didn't look away. "I did too. Once. Maybe more than once. I'll never know for sure." He looked at her, desperate. "How do you live with it?" She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You don't forget it. You don't justify it. You carry it, and you make sure it means something. You teach. You help. You make damn sure that the next pilot doesn't make the same mistake. You turn your guilt into something that saves lives. That's the only way forward I've found." They talked for 2 hours. When she left, Hollis shook her hand. "Thank you, ma'am." She nodded. "Come back to work, Captain. We need you." 3 weeks later, Hollis was back in the cockpit. Not perfect, not healed, but functional. Flying again. Sarah's reputation at the academy grew. She wasn't popular. She was too blunt, too hard, but she was respected. Cadets started requesting her classes. Her flight evaluations were brutal but fair. She didn't pass anyone who didn't earn it, and the ones she did pass knew they were ready. One afternoon, she was called to the commandant's office. She expected a reprimand. She'd failed a cadet the week before, and his father was a senator. But when she walked in, the commandant was smiling. "Colonel Vance, you've been nominated for the Air Force Distinguished Teaching Award." Sarah blinked. "By who?" "By your students. All of them." Anonymously, he slid a folder across the desk. "These are their letters." She opened it. Page after page of handwritten notes. "She changed the way I think about leadership. She saved my life before I even got to combat by teaching me how to survive it. She doesn't just teach flying, she teaches honor." Sarah closed the folder. "I don't need an award, sir." "I know," the commandant said. "That's why you're getting it." The ceremony was small. She wore her dress blues, stood on stage while they read her citation, but the moment that mattered came afterward. A young cadet, a woman named Torres, approached her nervously. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" Sarah nodded. Torres hesitated. "Do you ever regret it? Going back, after everything you went through?" Sarah thought about the question, thought about the nightmares that still came, the therapy sessions she still attended, the days when putting on the uniform felt like drowning. But she also thought about Captain Hollis flying again, about the cadets who would go into combat better prepared because of her, about the little girl with the toy airplane who wanted to be brave. No, Sarah said, I don't regret it, because every day I'm here, I get to make sure someone else comes home. That's worth everything. Torres's eyes filled with tears. She saluted. Sarah returned it, and in that moment, she realized something. She wasn't invisible anymore. She didn't want to be. She spent 3 years hiding from her past. But her past had made her who she was. A survivor, a teacher, a pilot who could bring 127 people home when no one else could. 6 months later, she was invited back to Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. The airline wanted to honor her. She declined at first, but they persisted. We want to name a gate after you, Gate 10, Row 10, where you were sitting. She finally agreed. The unveiling was quiet, just her, a few airline executives, and some of the passengers from Flight 2247. Rebecca Chen was there with Emma, who was now 8. The little girl ran up to Sarah and hugged her legs. You're my hero, she whispered. Sarah knelt down. You can be a pilot too, you know. Emma nodded seriously. I know, you showed me. The plaque read, Gate 10, in honor of Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Vance, whose courage at 35,000 feet reminded us that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear hoodies and sit in row 10, waiting for the moment they're needed most. Sarah stood in front of it, hands in her pockets, feeling awkward. A journalist approached. Colonel, how does it feel to be honored like this? She thought for a moment. Uncomfortable, but grateful. The journalist pressed, what would you say to other veterans struggling to find their place after service? Sarah looked at the plaque, at the gate, at the planes taking off outside the window. Then she said, you're not broken. You're just between missions. And when the call comes, you'll know what to do. Because once you learn to fly, you never really forget. That quote went viral. It was printed on mugs, shared on veteran forums, tattooed on forearms. Sarah didn't see most of it. She was too busy teaching, too busy flying, too busy living. But every now and then, she'd get a message. From a veteran who'd read the quote and decided to keep going. From a student who'd taken her class and made it through their first combat mission. From a stranger who just wanted to say thank you. And every time, Sarah would read the message, nod to herself, and get back to work. Because she learned something important. You don't save lives once and call it done. You save them every day, in small ways, in big ways, by showing up, by teaching, by refusing to stay invisible when the world needs you to be seen. 3 years after Flight 2247, Sarah Vance was promoted to full colonel and given command of the pilot training program at Nellis Air Force Base. She accepted with one condition: I get to keep teaching. They agreed, because they knew what everyone who met her eventually learned. Sarah Vance wasn't just a pilot, she was a force. A reminder that the best heroes are often the quietest ones. The ones sitting in row 10, headphones in, trying to disappear. Until the moment the world needs them, and then they don't hesitate. They just reach up, press a call button, and say the simplest, most powerful words in any language. Yeah, I can help. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change everything.